Welcome to another episode of Talkin with Doyle with State Representative Doyle Heffley. As always, we're joined by the indomitable Hunter Kipe and the disembodied voice of producer Chuck on the ones and twos. Representative Heffley, what are we talking about today?
Today we are going to talk about a House Bill 118 that came up for a vote this past week on the House floor, and kind of the implications of this bill. And it deals with child labor laws and employing young people and helping young people to get their first job. Or this bill, as proposed and passed, would hinder the ability for employers to hire young people, 16, 17-year-old folks, to get jobs.
You didn't vote for it, correct?
No, I voted against it, actually spoke against it on the House floor. And the reason is, back in 2012, under the Corbett administration, we had enacted child labor law reform, and we put strict penalties in for those that were trafficking in child labor. And we've seen a lot of this back under the Biden administration and even under the Obama administration. We were just opening up the floodgates and allowing a lot of unaccompanied illegal immigrant children into the nation, and there were people that were exploiting them, and it was a real issue. And so there were a lot of things that were enacted, and fines and penalties. Now, since then, we've had a change of administration and a change of focus at LNI. So what this bill would propose to do is doubling of the fines for anybody that violates a child labor law.
So what's an example?
So, for example, what we've seen in the reports from LNI, if an employer, say like a tour, like maybe you have a water park or a ski resort, and they may at certain seasons employ a lot of young people, get their first job when they're 16, 17 years old. They have to document for every one of those employees that they had their break and keep that documentation. So maybe they miss it. Now they're fining them. So what I'm hearing from a lot of those employers is that they're just not going to hire young people because the regulations are so burdensome.
So even if they miss like an hour, that means that they're going to get fined.
Yes, it could be. And we have very aggressively gone after that with this new department, which is a Department of Labor and Industry, and it seemed to be the Department of not wanting people to work. While we have an administration which wants to enhance benefits and keep giving illegal immigrants benefits, we have 16 and 17, 18-year-old folks that want to get their first job. Maybe it's at a resort. They're going to learn how to work. And I think it's so critical that we provide opportunities because we have a workforce shortage, and we're seeing more and more retired folks right now that are coming back into the workforce. But a lot of it is because employers can't find workers. So that 16, 17-year-old person wants to get their first job. We should be working with them to help them to get it. And LNI should be working with employers, and this is what you need to do to be compliant. Now, this is the 1900s when we had operating sweatshops.
Yeah. We're talking about small businesses in Pennsylvania, and that's what attracts the young person to get their first job is a small business and not a big corporation, right?
Yeah, and when businesses don't want to employ children because of the threat of L&I coming in and just harassing them, and these are businesses, these are mom and pops. Most of them they're good businesses. Now, look, the violators, they're going to be prosecuted under the law, right? But increasing those fines is going to do nothing but put another obstacle in the way of employers hiring young people, because majority of the violations that LNI cited since this law has been enacted have been administrative for paperwork, not because somebody didn't get their break, not because somebody was doing anything. The other thing that this really has terrible implications for is our volunteer fire companies. They have the youth firefighter programs. A lot of young people want to get involved in the fire service. We have a shortage of volunteers, and so they get involved. Now they train on the
does this also apply for volunteer firefighters?
Yes, this also. Wow. So the child labor laws cover those volunteers. So there's certain things that a youth firefighter can't do. So they can't obviously operate some of the equipment, right? And there's restrictions in what they can and can't do. But a lot of times you have these fire departments, these volunteer organizations. Now you put an administrative burden on them. And I have seen firsthand, LNI has actively gone out and gone after these volunteer fire. I mean, we're going to a breakfast at a fire company on the weekend, so you can help support them and help those volunteers. And now they're actively going, instead of working with those volunteer organizations to make sure everybody's compliant. So the youth firefighter, they obviously can't go into a burning building, right?
Sure.
But they can help on the scene with other things. So maybe they get over anxious and they try to do something until they're corrected, and the next thing you know, the fire company's getting a $2,000 fine. Well, they don't have that money.
No.
We should be working with them. This isn't about wanting to go back to the days of sweatshops. I've supported the law that we passed in 2012. This is a huge overreach.
So why the change? Because of change in administration, or why do you think this happened?
I think it was for purely political reasons. I mean, right after this vote went up, they already started attacking people that voted against it and say you somehow support,
Children in sweatshops.
Children in sweatshops.
Yeah.
And how ignorant is that? Right? I mean, we're really looking at legislating, passing bills that are going to help young people get jobs, help employers to hire, and help grow the economy. That's what the governor says he wants, but this legislation is counterproductive. And I really would have to say that the folks that were working on this legislation, they never hired anybody. They never managed anybody. And they've never gone through this. And they obviously are not listening. Look, the chamber was opposed to it. The NFIB was opposed to it. Not because they want to violate child labor laws, because they don't want to give another weapon to the folks over at L&I, the bureaucrats that are coming out and fining their companies because of paperwork.
Yeah, and now we're also talking about the increase of minimum wage. It's just looking very unattractive, and it's not pro-business for small businesses in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Look, I mean, they tried to, there was an argument, one of my colleagues from Philadelphia stood on the floor and had the audacity to say that there's not a labor shortage. He said, the problem is, somebody wants you to, if you want to take that job, but it doesn't pay enough, so you don't take that job. And my response was, if that job doesn't pay enough, you don't have to do that job. There's nobody forcing you to take a job if you think it doesn't pay enough to do it. But then don't come around with your hand out, wanting public benefits and taking the fruits of the labor that somebody else that is willing to do that job for, because that to me is ridiculous. That's socialism. That's why socialism always fails. You have to incentivize it. And we want to get young people into the workforce. We want to get them good jobs, and they can learn how to work so they can make some extra money, so they can maybe buy their first vehicle. They can go to the prom. They can do things in their community. Maybe if some of them want to help out their families with their family bills, but they can start to learn to be independent and join the workforce. And that's what we should be promoting, not legislation like this that's going to prohibit and really block companies and businesses and small mom and pop organizations from hiring young folks.